thought of what that word is with the sound in my ears. So I didn't necessarily agree with it. Tinnitus. Tinnitus. So you hear things in your ears. I just get it. It seems very balanced. I like it when it's coming both sides when I don't want stereo. Ooh. Like your people could fit it or higher sound. Listen and listen to it. Peace. Safety. That's not good. Here you go. A rolling second shot. Hope, and I have faith that in the very course of things, the moment when I see it, I will see it on the right, and I'm sure I am. I was actually a pretty good person for it. Start finding boundaries and personal love. People aren't as snobby around here as they are in Colorado. It's a long walk, but I'm heading, kind of the home stretch. Not really. 2 hours or so. It's taking a while for me today. My mom. Each day, I think too short. Just think, get through the day, get through the day. Things to change, generate some money. It'd be a really strange thing for me to generate money. I have to really think differently about that. It forces me to think. And I like to think differently. And I think if I have the safety that I need to think about generating money, because it's a very personal thing. At 50 years of age to think about generating money, doing something, at least something, help to buy or something connected to what I occupy myself every day. Because keep myself safe in life, I haven't used having money as a strong mode of safety, which I think would now be said to be essential to improving my safety in life. I'm saved from so many other things, anxieties and dangers. If I was making $3,000 to $6,000 a month, I could take care of myself and my mother and my dog and anything else, and I could relax and be able to enjoy all the other things I've acquired with a life of basically celibacy and poverty, and what you might expect from religious observance of that type of austerity or renunciation. The skim away from it just being about suffering. Probably denying how my suffering's not generally, it's a phenomenon. I do meet people at all. I just basically anything about my life is very interesting. I can tell them anything about myself and they don't care because they automatically assume I'm basically economically. There's no real hiding from some people. Just when they talk to you, they know you don't have real estate. By the way you are. They don't want to know. People don't want to know much about people who don't seem like they have a lot of money. They just assume there's not much there. What you have is having money for them is, by this estimation, by this example, taken so much from them that they've had to put into having money. They don't have enough brain power to appreciate the qualities of someone who only lacks money among other things that humans can possess. And by the labors as they've executed in their lives, because it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to do what I do. It takes a lot of work to be anyone. It would be great if my neighbors, my mothers, they need restoration, but we can't. I can't save in my mind. I can't save myself just in my mind, can I? And yet so much of physically, mentally, emotionally. They can help be a part, at least, of generating better circumstances for me and my mother. And contending with things or people that I think run counter to me or my mother's own interests, and I can feel like that and related subjects have come to occupy most of my life. And that's kept me busy. I hope it hasn't kept me distracted from doing things that I should have been doing instead. But there's always that danger, right, of being too occupied with things that don't give you a more practical and focused course upon, the kind of thing where people end up owning private jets. There's a guy on YouTube, and all his videos are just him flying his private jet. He's a really nice guy, get a big private jet, but, that's normal for him. Where just feeling the kind of respect that he gets when he walks out on the tarmac would be a life-altering tool, or to feel that way about themselves. Is where we end up in life chance. I know people who do interesting things with me, but I wouldn't want to live in their body. I wouldn't want to be their child. And it sounds like an awful thing. I met this young woman on a very early version of the internet. Not really for anything romantic, but at a level of kind of like teenage infatuation. Words, poetry, everything was text-based. A little philosophy. But the strange thing is, I knew her off and on for many years. Wrote a few poems to her. Poems I liked. That also just kind of was, wasn't just for her. It was, because I liked writing. And they had a very mystical feel to them, and I liked them, and I think they're still good, if I can recite it by heart. But essentially, like a cult, and a sociopath is like this, or the disease, what it does to people, I never experienced anything like the pleasure or joy or just pure friendship as I did the first few times I talked to her, or even the first few minutes I read one of her posts where she said something like she liked my poetry. I never had anything as good as that. It never really added up to any expectations. I hardly saw the person, and she basically kept me on a long leash. And male friends of hers treated me awfully, and she showed a very complete compulsion to try to have sex with any other male that I happen to know, which was very odd, but ended up becoming an aircraft mechanic. 15 years out of another protracted not talking to each other, she called me or tracked me down, ostensibly because she really wanted to and had been trying to do so for various purposes. That these people had died or those people had died. And all she could talk about was how the other mechanics or pilots thought about her hair, or that the father of her child, she didn't really care about him. I just met him in a bar. And you couldn't tell any more than the first time I met her that she wasn't just a 15-year-old girl trolling for a little bit of trial, but being very friendly, very intelligent, owns her own house, but didn't ask me, after 15 years and after more than that of so-called friendship, anything about my life, what had happened to me, what my life was like, what I'd gone through, what I was dealing with. And despite, in many cases, the early interest she had in philosophy, whenever the few interactions we had devolved or not, or turned into something philosophical that I meant to say, she always seemed to dismiss whatever it was. And like other somewhat sociopathic women, that early interest that attracts you in well-being or health, or something of an emotional or abstract nature that could bring brought to bear upon human ethics and unnecessary feelings that we might have, or qualms about different aspects of the world as we grew up with vulnerable, open, strong minds, which is, to me, more normal than not. That door was completely shut. Her little tale to me about how this lake I used to live by, she said, "Oh yeah, here," and I was reading Paradise Lost. And she loved the effect that that had on me, and maybe she was. I saw her ever talk about or read a book of poetry ever in my entire life. Nor did she ever talk about reading poetry ever again. And Milton is pretty high-level literature. Nor did she show any interest in the attendant philosophies or anthropology or mythology that Milton touches upon. Just that it fits into the category of, I'm a really smart person. Sometimes the most that she would tell me about self were just about how her older boyfriend were down the stairs. And that's all she would tell you. Like these lurid, dark, dramatic tales that had nothing to do with why would someone throw you down the stairs? Why would they even anger you to begin with? Are you still friends with this person? Or any of these people? It was all weird. But she fixes airplanes for a living. She probably has an interesting life, does everything you're supposed to do. As then, if she met me online again, she would say, I don't really like this life or this world. Away to a world of dark Phantom of the Opera imagination. You know, Susan Kay was both, so you can kind of Phantom of the Opera, you can kind of see where this is going. And I noticed that her choices in music tended to be quite superficial, even though she told me that she played the violin in an orchestra. You know, that she had taught herself the violin and was playing in the local city's orchestra. But if you go on her YouTube channel, all of the songs, nothing is classical. It's just popular, weird, romantic female hits. It doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? Chopin, there's not a Tchaikovsky, there's not a Mozart, there's not a Beethoven, there's nothing. Nothing. All of these divergent interests. And at the center of them, one person who attracts or wants to all of this male interest. You know? And it was just, that was it. I was done. Just, I never need to talk to this person again. I mean, it's so sad because I really liked her. I still think she's a really cool person. You know? It's not her fault, but I would never, it just takes me into a dark well of depression because there's no one there for me. No one there who really cares about me. She cares about some thought about me in her mind. It'll only keep me at that level. She doesn't really want to know me. She doesn't want anyone to really know her. Right? She doesn't need to. She just had all the right traits to, you know, and all of her friends were, you know, higher economics, middle class, all weird, you know, all well-to-do. It was like they were weird with money. They're an example of people could work hard and have money. Their children could be above average intelligence, Mensa candidates, all that kind of stuff. But I couldn't figure out. I invited her to I got some tickets because I volunteered at an outdoor concert. Cool bands, Metallica, cool stuff at the time in the 90s. It was like a strange thing that happened. It's not something I would normally do. I think my dad got tickets. We volunteered for 5 minutes and I went into the mosh pit. You know, I was like, and she disappeared. And next thing you know, I saw her with a bunch of people. I guess she said these are her friends. And she was going to go home with them. And that was it. And I thought, oh, okay. Oh, where'd Pam go? Oh. And it was like, no, thank you for the tickets, nothing. She just took the next best thing, right? And all I had to do was do something that I enjoyed. Spend 15 minutes in the mosh pit just to go off and do something because I was a man who had never really let loose. I've never felt comfortable. I'm comfortable with her. I have some male friends there. My dad's there. My brother's there. I'm in my 20s, you know, but I'm still kind of mentally, emotionally, probably like 15 years old. And this is like, this is for me. But the moment I do something spontaneous and impulsive, she disappears. It breaks the connection. Yeah. And they just say like, oh, you just love yourself too much, right? Think about it. It's like all you had to do is interact with them in a way where you're getting to know each other. Enjoy yourself too much. They hate your guts. As soon as you be yourself, as soon as you do something impulsive and real, even if I've just gone for 15 minutes, she was like, of course, it was like in my mind, I was like, oh, of course you met your friends. Of course they're here. Of course you know them. You know? She was people's commanding officer in the local cadets quite often. So she had an in with a lot of different people. The first person I knew that would just go out with me somewhere and just take off with someone else. It was like, wow. You know? I guess I wasn't entertaining enough for her. You know? No one to say, hey, where were you? Oh, in the mosh pit. Oh, what was that like? You know, it was kind of like a thrill in my life. I would have enjoyed sharing it with someone. You know? Maybe she felt insecure. Maybe I abandoned her in some sense. But she was never someone who seemed out of confidence. And it's like, anyway, it's just a weirdest thing. I just felt legit. And that's kind of what people were always doing, letting me down, letting me down, letting me down. Wasn't very good at making good friends. But she stayed in and out of my life for many years, and I just had enough. I figured it out that she wasn't my friend. She wasn't a bad person necessarily, but she would never be my friend. That wasn't happening. It's just somebody had to admit it. She wasn't. She didn't need me for anything. She didn't need me economically or anything. I was like a pet, you know? Like the father of her child, like a pet she found at the bar one night, you know? And that's as much as she could give, and that's as much as she could get, you know? Just throwing herself in front of you and going. She sometimes would make like sexually suggestive statements. She called me once and said she needed to be filled up. You know, it's like, oh. She would just say things like that, strangely sexual things. Titillating. Like, if you didn't present the right signals, it was like she was just practicing saying things that would get attention from you. You know, because you were there and you were fresh meat. She'd learned to be predatory. You know, no one would think of it that way, but she's exercising an advantage upon someone who, unlike many of the people she knows, is just not that aggressive. So immediately they take full advantage of it. You might think they're insecure, they might think this. Doesn't mean they even know what they're doing. But the pattern says everything. They never find out about you. She met me once for coffee and said, oh, we've got to get more food into you and fatten you up. She was a plump Italian, I feel bad saying this, but Italian, what's that word? Ukrainian. Right? Oh, no doubt she liked me. No doubt she liked things about me. Or, you know, hey, Landon, where are you? But it was, you know, other than making that comment, nothing was ever about me. She didn't say, like, what are you eating? Or what's the last great meal you had? Right? What kind of coffee are you drinking? It was never grounded, polite, sensible. Just these dramatic statements. Right? I had a feeling. I knew emotionally she liked me. Felt safe around me. That was okay. There was a compatibility that was certainly whimsical and timeless. No doubt about it. I lived on Salt Spring. She sent me a scarf once and a letter, a beautiful letter. And I didn't know how to interpret it. And I kept that scarf for years, even though it used to irritate my neck. You know, and because I didn't know how to respond. We didn't have a romantic relationship. I didn't know her status. And it just seemed like it went off into, like it was basically a poem about seeing each other, but never really being able to touch and stuff like that. And I thought, you know, friendly, but like plus. You know, so I get you were thinking of me and you made the scarf for me. That's really nice. But it's like, what are we to each other? Like, if I knew for sure, I would have sent her a scarf and sent her a letter. I think I did. Now I think about it, I did write back to her. I did. I can't reason. Yeah, I did write back to her. And some things that were equally sort of romantic in their connotations, which was how we knew each other the first time we ever met. So 10 years later or 20 years later, this was the only way we, you know, right? It's like, it's totally, right? And I would spend time with her and did in her life, but she didn't want to tell me anything real, ever. Like, you could see, you never got to know her. Like, what is her father really like? What's really going on here? You always felt like something, but you never knew what it was. You know, like she knew a secret that you didn't know. Something about life, something about her friends, something. They all seemed to know something I didn't. And I didn't quite get what it was. But they seemed to understand that I was sort of her pet. They didn't accept me. They didn't like me. And I didn't like them. But we had her in common. Which means that her male friends were always territorial. You know? Which means that everything is in an excited state. As a consequence, I got to have time with her. It was really special. You know? Oh, wow. You know, once every 3 years, you have a cup of coffee. Like, it was a big day for me. Oh, I'm seeing Pam. And that day, you'd be like, wow, man, she must be a really special person. Oh, yeah, I get to see Pam today. She gives you 15 minutes of your time, and you have this wonderful feeling about the special person. But down deep, it's like a TV show. It doesn't really make you feel that special because there's something missing. They never ask you anything about yourself. They never seem to have any knowledge of you except maybe things you gave them, or, things about you that connect, like special that you share, like a secret language. She knew something about everything, was very comfortable with herself, had learned a lot of confidence through the confidence, but it was almost there were parts of her brain that were overdeveloped. When I first met her, she was very quick to tell me how smart she was. You know, knows all the constellations in the sky, civilian member of the Royal Astronomical Society, member of the Astronomy Club, member of Mensa. Um, she clearly understood herself, and perhaps rightly so, if you're that smart, as a very smart person. And I was okay with that. In retrospect, it was amazing how much of first meeting her was about telling me really marquee things about herself. It should have thrown up red flags a little bit. You know, it wasn't like, hey, Landon, because I liked astronomy. What do you like about astronomy? You know, you know, what level are you at? Have you read like just public books, or do you know spherical trigonometry or anything like that? I'd actually gone to school to study astronomy. I hadn't done well. I'd flunked, but I could probably be, and I'd had books. I could be conversing about various things, but we never talked about astronomy. She just told me she was a member of the Royal Astronomy and knew all the constellations. A fact I never really found out. We never spent any time under the stars. I believe her. I believe she was that smart, but it wasn't really about sharing anything. It was about her sense of personal identity. Right? Like she was an actress on a stage, and you had to find the right lines if you wanted to be with her. Figure out what role were you. What was the next most perfect thing to say that she would take an interest in what you're saying? And when you don't feel like you know what to say, to speak at someone's level or to get the interest that might be in the often with a narcissist, right? If nothing else, she's doing to be a certain person. There's no room left for you to be a person because it's conciliating. I'm sure when two people meet, there's a certain amount of room or potential to bullshit each other. Maybe just to say things that are so self-flattering. Oh, hi there. How you doing, Vicky? Oh, really? It was your birthday. Oh, and Neil Armstrong showed up and planted a flag in your moon. Oh, okay. Well, I went for a long walk and I talked to myself all day. um, but no, it's like a narcissist will, like a salesman, will take up all of the energy. You're telling me some cool, like I wouldn't normally tell people that, I've written a lot of books, because it's a little bit daunting, and yet now and then, you share things with, people share things with me, but they've already taken up. I mean, it's a liberty, it's a luxury, it's perhaps self-indulgent to just blurt that out to someone. I mean, it's not like saying you built a wall or you built your own house. Like it's a lot of work. It was like, but if you write a book, it's like, I don't know about that. Like you're just pulling my dick, right? It's like, well, it's work, but it's not because you enjoy it and you work up to it. Like it's just something you convince yourself you can do and you want to, and you like what's unfolding before you, and you don't know how to do it, and I didn't know how to do it, but I'm glad I finally figured out a way to tell that story. The hardest part is the angst of like, you know, when am I going to start? And, am I going to screw this up? But that pretty much goes away as soon as you start liking the story that's being told. Now you feel confident. You should feel good. It's still a challenge. You still don't want to screw it up, but it's like shooting hoops outside. You're going to miss a few baskets, but as long as you improve, that story is going to be good in the end. Because in the story, you're hungry to say something. And with every chapter, you've said something, but you haven't said everything you wanted to say. So the worst case scenario is that you're building to say something else. So once you start with the right attitude and you're enjoying it and the stars are aligned, it pretty much writes itself. Still challenging, but in the best sense. You're making decisions, but it's also kind of creating itself. to me, it's easier than playing the guitar. It's easier than playing the flute. It's easier in many respects than sitting and watching TV. It's just something that you kind of practice and you get over. Like, it's easier than jogging. It's easier than going to work. It's easier than a crossword, really, because you get to say whatever you want. Never talked to anyone about that. And I would have liked to have that conversation with Pam. And she could go, oh, cool, Landon. Like, and, Pam, I wouldn't normally talk this way. I know that, not a lot of people write strange and different. And maybe like I'm being arrogant, or I wouldn't want what I did to ever dwarf somebody else's sense of self. Rather, writing a book for me was what I did to improve my sense of self. And if you read it, if you wanted to, I hope you would find something, at least vaguely happifying to your sense of self. And that's what I was focused on. For myself, for the most part, and with no very strong ambition that anyone would want or need to read what I wrote. Seen in that context, I think it's not a tremendous offering, but it is a humble one, and it deserves a certain respect. It's me. It's like all they want to do is come into the world, fart a few words, and leave, and have nobody molest me. Very looks fairly low here. I need water. Gotta force myself to drink some water, and then we will go on our main meal. I haven't taken as many breaks as I could at this point, so doing well. Yeah, I'm trying to write and think and talk in a way that I can generate money and improve my safety in the world. Figure, yeah, horn. Each day now, set the foundation, just like a book. I'm trying to make my life like a book. I'm setting the foundation now for a book where the story involves generating money. Tell the story that generates money. This is what I did. I made this determination to generate money. I made this determination. I remade this determination. I started to make every day some kind of thought about the determination to generate money. Hey, I'm 50 and I've never felt enough deep desperation about making money. A lot of other things, but not making money. And now I've built a life for the sake of my health and safety that doesn't, and most clearly and acutely doesn't have the necessary advantages of money in keeping myself safe. So I must generate money now. And all I know about is trying to keep myself safe while not generating money. So I think that's the best thing for me in the interim is to be honest about that and say, I want to generate money and about what I need and what I want, and how I've discovered with all of my work, as philosophical or as health-oriented as it may seem to want to be, that if I want safety and comfort in life and from another, the one thing I've learned is none of it is ever going to keep me safe unless I use it, or in some sense use something to generate money. And it's the first time I've really said that about myself as an intimate aspect of, for all the world that takes this or that from human beings, I want to give something to, in a way that you maybe decided by the time you were 12, 50, and going, okay, the world is such and such a bad place, but I think I might have to give it something and get some money in exchange. Before it just comes knocking at the door to take some money from me or something. Come on, I'm talking to you. Come on. I'm talking to you now. Share, share. Let it all out. These are the things that we want to do. Come on. I'm talking to you. Come on. I'm talking to you now. Shout. Shout. Let it all out. I like to say that like a choir boy. Like, shout, shout. Let it all out. Shout, shout. Let it out. If you can. Shout, shout. Give it to the cat. These are the things that we give the cat. Shout, shout. It's not all that. These are the things that we call our scat. Come on. It's all projection. Well, I've got to figure out what's real. What's realistic. Or at least the language of what's realistic. In the realm of generating money, what's realistic? Now, is it, am I realistic? Am I crazy? I look at myself really hard in the mirror and say, if you want to generate money, you're going to have to change the following things about your life. Like, well, I've been choosing the path that I think is the safest path for me right now. That's been increasingly beneficial to me in most respects. I do have the odd complaint, mostly just my right foot. And we're going on. But people have been able to get a fair amount of weirdness. As you start a new path, you're going to find a certain type of behaviors you don't really want to see sometimes. And I make my way. That's the worst thing I experienced. But I didn't know I needed to change. I needed a new dedicated path. This is it. I think I've gone quite far. Well, I'm used to walking about 10 miles a day. So it's probably coming on now 3 o'clock. Probably home by 5. That should be a good day. My mom is in possession of some fairly good news about she's going to be able to go see her daughter and stay in a hotel in Victoria and drive home. And she's looking forward to taking a bit of having a getaway. And I think my sister is planning on